taking a look at the gains that we've seen on the commodity front, especially gold, and that's really on the back of a weaker dollar. And also just looking at what happened last year, this time, this is when all the trouble started to brew. A very different picture, but why do you think gold is doing so well despite the positivity that we've seen coming through?
It's amazing in 1 year. I mean, Lehman Brothers on the intro was, it's a completely different world to in now. Gold is, for me, is a bit of an odd one. I mean, I don't really understand the whole gold bug scenario. Typically always seen as a hedge against inflation, certainly a hedge against a weakening dollar. Possibly there has been a lot of rhetoric going around the markets that, this is the cycle has returned. We're almost through this economic crisis, and of course, in a rising environment of economic growth, and interest rates go up. And I think this is seen as a sign of against inflation. So, the gold bug scenario, I don't really quite buy it because it's. You don't normally have these asset classes moving in tandem. You don't have equity markets running up and gold prices breaking 1,000. So, one of those is going to give. I'm not sure which one it is.
This time last year, as I said, this is when trouble started to brew. September and October usually negative months for the market. And given that gold has rallied so much, do you think that there is quite a bit of risk aversion still in the market in some sense? And do you think that we should expect some kind of pullback now?
Everyone's looking for this infamous pullback. I don't know if we're going to have an all fall down 10 or 20% pullback in the equity markets. Certainly, we can expect, the buying on the sort of equity front to be a little bit subdued. September, typically, as you pointed out, usually a bit of a softer month. It's the end of the earnings season was in August. The dividends have been paid. There really is quite a lack of activity. October notorious for the 87 crash as well. So people do tend to have a little bit of a flight from quality going into these 2 months. I think you would have noticed if you looked at the VIX index, sitting at 24% a couple of weeks ago, now back up near 30. So a little bit of a risk-averse nature, and buying risk at the moment is cheap. I mean, the VIX at 28, 29% is a very cheap way for you to buy protection. So I think it's going to be a subdued to down month or two.
As a result of higher commodity prices and a weaker dollar, we're also seeing incredibly strong rand at this stage, which is good for the interest rates outlook and the inflation outlook in the country, but unfortunately definitely a dampener on the likes on the manufacturing sector and of course resource stocks as well. Let's just take a look at the impact that it's going to have on the resource stocks firstly.
A bit of a double-edged sword. I mean, you drive down the road and see the headlines that gold just broke $1,000, so fantastic for the gold miners. But I can tell you now, with the rand sitting at 7.45, those gold producers are busy crying on their shafts at the moment. It is going to have a massive impact. I don't think people actually have realised, what a problem it is for the likes of, say, Harmonies, which entire production is in South Africa. The price at 750 is going to have a huge effect. I don't think we've seen that yet. On the other side, that is though, if you're the Reserve Bank, you're looking at this and you're possibly going to have to cut rates. So the outlook is we'll probably head into a lower interest rate environment. Maybe might soften the rand a little bit, but we're up against it. You've got the MTN Barty supposed preliminary announcement yesterday. There's a lot of positives for the rand and a lot of foreign inflow, which is going to keep this rand stubbornly strong. You
mentioned the Reserve Bank. Do you think they should be intervening to weaken the rand?
I don't believe in intervention. I think markets should make up, market forces are fairly efficient and should determine where the price is. But there's no doubt about it that they've probably got a little bit of extra interest rates to go, and they should probably be cutting sooner rather than later.
The likes of Sasol, we know that obviously a stronger oil price bodes very well for Sasol, but also a weaker rand offsets some of those gains.
Yeah, interesting, and Sasol actually have its announcements for this coming Monday. So there's been I saw a research note from Nedbank Capital yesterday. Also a note from ourselves we put out saying we maintain a fairly cautious approach. I think Sasol is another one of those counters who points out that the strong rand is going to be hurting the bottom line a lot. Any gain in the oil price, of course, is not back up at 75. It's been drifting a little bit lower recently, as of the last day or two, above 70. But also, we watch this Monday. It's going to be interesting for the announcement. I think it's going to be a few surprises there.
Platinum price holding up relatively well, and also encouraging news out of China that car sales there doing relatively good. Looking at a company such as Lonmin, which has increased quite dramatically over the last few trading sessions, but that's really on the back of a lot of speculation that Xstrata has renewed a bid for Lonmin.
Yeah, platinum, those car sales you referred to, I think the increase was 90%. I mean, quite staggering. Yes, it is going to create a sort of a bid for the platinum miners. Yeah, like Strata deal, I think they downgraded the likelihood of a deal with Anglos, but most people thought that was never going to happen anyway. Possibly Lonmin's speculation thrown in there. There's also, I believe it's very difficult to borrow script. You can't short the stock, also adds a squeeze to it. So, Lonmin's is probably a nice big bubble waiting to pop, but at the moment it's a huge interest in the junior miners and certain platinum miners.
Are you staying away, or are you going into the likes of the junior miners, and also just looking at a company like Implats as well, which has just concluded wage negotiations?
Not staying away. I think you've got to be with the momentum. At the moment the trend is on the upside. But these counters are fully priced. I mean, it was only 3-4 months ago the likes of Impala Platinum, asking for another $1 billion from Anglo's just to keep its balance sheet and its business turning over. So these companies they're not out the woods yet, and I think there's a question mark over the sustainability of platinum at $1,200 or $1,300.